I'm super excited to have Dev here visiting all the way from currently West Virginia, but also Philly. You said um, I first
Yeah.
met I first met Dev in Virginia Commonwealth University when we were going to school together, actually, and I didn't really talk to you much then. I mostly was talking to like a mutual friend of ours, right, Kimeen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin was a classmate of mine.
And I just sort of tangentially saw Deb's work, and I was really excited about how you dealt so much with sculptural, three-dimensional objects. And in the photo program, we're always like struggling with the flattening of photography, and so I was really excited about that. Hang on, someone else joined us. Anyways, yeah, so I'm very, very happy that you can join us. That was kind of a lackluster intro, but um,
No, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen.
Oh wait, I gotta make that possible again. Sorry. Cool. And is it all right if it's like a relatively small group of us? Is it all right if we jump in with questions during your talk?
Yeah, yeah, that would make me feel I'm way more of a conversationalist, so feel free, yeah, anytime.
Cool. Awesome. And I'm going through some crazy allergies, so you might see me blowing my nose. If it gets gnarly, I might have to tuck off my camera. But yeah,
Yeah, or like yeah, mute button or whatever.
absolutely no
Are you guys
muting blowing
seeing
my
my
nose.
screens right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Dev Hein. I'm a digitech in the fashion industry mostly. Went to VCU for photo. I'm gonna share my work in undergrad and kind of how I got here, starting from the beginning. No plans, so I started VCU undeclared. I like didn't really. I mean, I have really young parents right now, or I have for my whole life, not just right now, but actually they're kind of regular parents' age now. Um, but they didn't really go to college, so I didn't even know that I was supposed to apply. Like people around me were just like, "Oh, I got into blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh, like I should probably like apply somewhere." I applied really late. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know like what I wanted to do, but everybody was doing that, so I just kind of did too. Um, why photo? Decent like public art program at VCU, so I decided to apply after being there for like a year. Mainly because my best friend in high school got into SVA for photo, which is like a really, really great like private art school. Like his professors were like artists that I was like learning about, like or I would eventually learn about after I got in. But like we would just like drive around in high school and take pics of stuff. Like he was like really talented. He took this photo of me back in the day before I had hair and things. But it was like Tumblr era. We were kind of like into washed out, mundane stuff. I was really into like Americana stuff, Stephen Shore type stuff. If you don't know him, he's like this like photographer from the 60s, 70s that would like photograph like cars and like houses and like cool things with like really banal things, but like it was just so great to look at, like just color wise, like composition wise. It was like very simple. It was like something like super inspiring to me at the time. Which kind of actually reminds me of my grandfather's photos. He was like a Vietnam War photographer, and I ended up with a camera from him. But I didn't really know, like at the time, that like he was doing these things, so it didn't really like influence my like choice to start pursuing photo in college. It was really just like I was actually going to do graphic design, but my best friend was like a photographer, and he was like, "You should do this." So I applied and I got in, blah, blah, blah. Like it was a 4 year program, but at the five. And then I kind of even dragged that out even farther because the reality of art school is that I had to take a lot of semesters off because I was working in kitchens. I was doing a lot of like art documentation for my like sculpture friends to like help pay rent or like just actually doing work to help. Like I'll get into this later, but some of my sculpture work, I wasn't like a sculpture background, so I'd help like take photos of people's stuff so that they could like fabricate stuff for me. So a lot of trade. Uh, I didn't have budget to make the work that I wanted. Like I was like being inspired by like all these lectures and these like artist visits like this, and like I had these like grand like I wanted to work with like glass or like plexi or like all these like expensive materials, and I didn't have the budget to do that. So I would compromise materials and kind of just string them together because like in a crit, like everybody's always asking about like why'd you use like this material or like like whatever. So you had to have a reason for everything. I would kind of just like figure it out conceptually, like how I could fit it into like what the piece was supposed to be, which ended up actually being like pretty inspiring, like embracing like those mistakes, you know what I mean? Um, but honestly, yeah, like having that kind of constraint, like having like to work through school, like not having budget, not being able to take like those internships and things, it sharpened my brain and kind of taught me how to think more critically, I guess. Like, so ultimately it was like, I mean, it really like shaped me, and I wouldn't have developed like the relationships and the work ethic that I needed either. Which is why making friends and finding community is like super important to my path. Honestly, like I've never found a job or like I don't know, I wasn't like the greatest like student like academically, but I was very charged up and like I was friends with my professors. Like I just wanted to be in the space. Like I was like really charged up by a dialogue and like the community. So like finding people who had the same kind of energy as me became my closest friends. Yeah, I was like really invested in their work. I was invested in my work. I was just invested in like the people, like even if I wasn't super interested or if the work wasn't for me, let's say, like if people were like putting in effort, like I was really into just like peer critique and like dialogue and things like that. Like late night hanging out in the studio, kind of like drinking and like being challenged on like like what kind of like dialogue I was like trying to have or what color this thing should be or like yeah, just spending time there with like my this kind of like close friend group that I had um was really stimulating to have like just that push and drive, and I feel like they really became important to like who I am and like my path and how I ended up getting jobs later and kind of like what my work was and like how I treated art and academia. Um, we were like a pretty angsty little bunch. It was really just, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't really trying to be difficult. I was just like rejecting a lot of like what academia was asking of me. Like I was starting to kind of question what art meant inside of the institution, like and who it was for. Like these, what kinds of conversations were considered valid, I guess. Um, yeah, I just was really kind of challenging the structures around me, but like from a really young perspective, which kind of came off as like, I didn't think I was being angsty, but like kind of like in hindsight, like just seems a little bit cringe. Like I wasn't disrespectful in any type of way, but like I just was like, I don't know, it was like being formed into like this way of thinking and like they always talk about like teaching like art in academia and like what that conversation is and like if that's really possible and blah 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 like with the etiquette and like I don't know, that's like a whole different conversation, but on the right here like this moment that I had like early in undergrad was my friend John like printed the most expensive photo in 2013. It was called like Phantom by this guy. And we were just like talking about like kind of like selling like art and like kind of like documenting the space and blah, blah, blah. Like we were just kids and like, so like he like printed it out. We were learning how to like roll print from like Forrest Kelly, who was Jim Goldberg's former assistant. Jim Goldberg's like a pretty legendary like photo dude, and Forrest Kelly, our professor for this class, was like teaching us like how to print and things. But anyway, during this crit, like he printed out the most expensive photo and like spray painted a dick on it, like, and then like got totally ripped. by Forrest Kelly about it, which I totally respect him. He's like a great and really smart and thorough guy. But I feel like that moment, like, and like that challenge and like kind of young like dialogue on like commercial art was something that made an impression on me. Um, which is when I first started making conceptual works or started like thinking in this way. I was in like a studio like lighting class, and I was really interested in like challenging photography as like evidence of truth. And like because photo then was really treated as like objective and like factual or like documentary. And I was like really tired of that way of thinking. Besides, like, there's this movement in the 70s where there's like a bunch of photos, like, or photographers printing photos on like objects and like making like 3D type things. And that was like really cool. Like, but whatever, that was like before me. But I was super interested in how images could like lie or perform or construct reality. Obviously, before like AI became a thing. But I was really into people like Lucas Blaylock. He was like an artist that was like big into like image manipulation and like the idea of like pushing pixels around, or even the idea that like in the binary code, there's like a series of ones and zeros that represents like kind of any image that you could think of, like hypothetically, like that type of stuff, I guess. And like thinking this way kind of ultimately made like my first like working in a commercial image factory environment kind of tough on me. And then obviously because AI exists now, like everybody's questioning like photo and media in general and like whether to believe it or not. So I mean it's a kind of a hot topic. Moving on, this work is like in between the time when I started making sculpture to photograph and then manipulate them digitally. Like the piece on the left is a sculpture that I made just to exist as a photo. Um, and there's like digital manipulation going on. It's about like whitewashing with like these upset aesthetics of like I don't know, it's like net art kind of like glowing, and then I have this like Lucas Blaylock kind of edit going on with the flags there. And then
Devin,
um
is that like a glowing light underneath those four panels?
yeah, so I just like had neon bars because my friends were working in glass and like could make neon. So like like going through Home Depot, like looking, I was like working with marble a lot because it was like this sort of symbol that the middle class was like kind of coming up in the 50s. Like when I was like really into Americana, like marble was like a big sort of texture that I would latch on to because it made like the middle class feel bougie in a way. So like I was like buying these tiles. I didn't know like what I was gonna do with them yet, but like I figured out like oh my God, like I worked with these marble tiles on like a lot of iterations of a lot of different things, and that'll come up later. But yeah, yeah, there's neon under there. Um,
The cool
What
thing.
does
but it wasn't ever. Sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering what the flag says. Free spirit?
Oh, it says yeah, free spirit.
Ah, sorry. Cool.
So, but this sculpture was made to exist as documentation. Like as a photo major, like I was at this time kind of interested in like making objects that I could photograph that would make like a cool photo, or that I know that I could like kind of push those things. So at the end of the day, like it was, I mean, mediums were like really blending at this time. Like they were starting to kind of collapse into it. Like I remember like painting majors were doing like performances and calling them paintings, or like taping that, or like you know what I mean? Like they, as long as you could defend an idea, like that was like kind of good art to me. Like it wasn't really like that's what I kind of define as art, is like you're having this dialogue, right? And if you can defend and like get this dialogue across, like whether you want people to talk about it or not, or like who it's for, then that's, that's pretty artsy. Um, but yeah, photo students were kind of like abandoning straight photo or prints on the walls again. Like installations became like a big thing. Like there's like I feel like a bunch of people like around me, especially in the photo program, were like trying to do like off the wall installs. Like things were becoming sculptural and spatial, like kind of more experiential, which is like actually really exciting. Um, so moving more towards sculpture, like the photo on the left was like an object that I made to take a photo of, and then like the documentation would just be the photo, like this kind of like transitory moment, or like it just feels like, I don't know, like snapshotty with the hard flash, like so it like brings more allure in because it's not like, even though it's like a staged and set up photo, like the treatment of it with like a hard flash and snapshot makes it feel more disposable, I guess. The photo on the right is more sculpture focused. Like I was like making the sculpture first and I was like thinking about the sculpture, but then as I wanted to document it, like I just photoshopped it into like kind of like a fake space, kind of more obviously. Um, and like with like other props like these cinder blocks like holding it with like a plastic chain and like playing with weight and the idea of like reality of the space, even though it's kind of like a mundane take on like being, I don't know, trick with the trickery, I guess. That's what was like really interesting to me, was kind of like, yeah, like performing with the images, like how do they lie? Like even if I'm like trying to Photoshop something that's not like super uncanny, but like whatever that is, like in between there, like in between canny and uncanny. Like it's like it's fake, but that's what I think is cool about it, you know? Um oh, you know what? I didn't start my timer, so but anyways, moving on. I got way more sculptural with it. Like I was like really into like how people are like walking through these spaces. Like I'm doing a lot of sculpture, but I'm referencing like the photo world with these stands and like these like tracking colors. So this work kind of involved, I had like cameras in the room, and if you blocked either of like this color here or this color from the camera, then a projection would pop up on either catty cornered wall there. So like in the GIF here, you can see how like just on my lab, I don't have documentation of like the space. Like actually, I was really just like into photographing that at that point. But yeah, so like I'm blocking this red ball with my hand, and then the projections are like kind of popping up on the screen. And then those gradients were just like scripts that I wrote because I was in like a programming class. Um, so yeah, this is like where it's like taking off. I'm like bending steel. We're like buying fruits, and I don't know. We're like seeing what happens in the space. People are like doing this. I'm like a photo kid, so I don't know like anything about this like at this point. But I had a really great. I did take like this sculpture class with Abigail Lucian, who is a really great friend of mine now. But she was like getting in my head about like just like all of this. So moving on, we are in the early net art experience now. So I mean, this whole time I'm really interested in net art at the same time as like I'm interested in Americana, but like I'm referencing with like bright colors and like these shapes and like that neon, like, I don't know, like my early experiences on the internet are like RuneScape and like MySpace and things like that. So like the and marquee and like semicolon thing, like HTML. So I'd build like simple HTML pages where like my images could kind of live together in like non-linear ways, like pasting them however. And it was about more like creating worlds like in a web page, like GeoCities, like how like the web can be a space and like how my images and sculptures can exist in that space as opposed to like existing in like a 3D space where they're interacted with and I don't have like control over like the interaction as much because I mean I'm not that experienced with the 3D at this point. Um, but I think in hindsight, like a lot of my work was about escaping reality and building like alternate systems, if that makes sense. So like some of my inspo, or I used to make like birthday cards for my friends, just like things like this. Molly Soda is a big like influence of mine. So she's like, I mean, it's so like dense with information and imagery, but it is kind of like funny because like we're taking in so much media now. Like it's almost like scrolling like on a reel or something. Like you can't stop. Like there's something at every turn.
This is pretty coincidental,
Um,
but we just had a reading that included a little bit about Molly Soda.
I
Awesome.
mean, it's like we were saying, like it's funny how like it just comes back like into relevance because of what the internet is and like just the younger generations and how charged up they are with wanting to experience the internet, like kind of how maybe I or you were able to experience it. Um, Another big one was like Petra Court, right? Like, I mean, look at that. Just going and go like there's something really cool about net art and how like I just feel like the internet's so boring because it's all about like having this information and providing it to like the viewer like very accessibly and like easy but also quote unquote beautiful and like simple, but like the thing about net art and the web and how it exists is like they're making the user work for the experience. um there's like so many net art sites I could show you, but
This is really interesting as per like our conversation where like through your talk I'm like, oh man, like I wonder how Dev feels about AI. I wonder how Dev feels about AI. And just looking at like this site, your site here, or Courtright's site, or even the Molly Soda thing, like I would love to see Google try to give like an AI summary of that. Like what would that be?
yeah.
It seems like a good
Yeah.
thwarting to that, yeah.
So yeah, this is my site. I like I host it on a server. I think it's fun just to like I mean, just to click around and like experience like things, like I have just little hidden links and this is like blog type post type stuff and it's like an iframe that sits in like it's just like the nav bar is not just at the top. Like there's these things that you can interact with and like click on and they all go to different places, and it's just more fun to experience kind of like the web this way, I feel like. Um, but
I
yeah,
feel like
that
this is
was like,
how, oh, sorry. No, I just feel like this is how the internet looked when I was younger, like when I was a kid growing up. And we're kind of more in a minimalist internet, or at least the internet I'm interacting with. So this is really cool to
right.
see.
It's like not so yet stylized and like conformed in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and that was like what was fun about the internet. I feel like, I mean, everybody kind of latches on to like these like aesthetics now, and like it is just like a lighter place to be. Like the internet's just like a different place. I feel like it's very like it can be very serious or like corporate. It's less about connecting or like less about connecting in a specific way. Like there's that app right now called Perfectly Imperfect and like I'm on there. There's like the range of age of people, but it's got this like net art aesthetic. And like what I'm kind of digging about it is that there's no algorithm. It's just kind of a feed of people like all over the world, like young or old, like and what they're doing. And it felt like kind of like when Facebook like statuses first came out and everybody was like, this is like actually what I'm like, it was like, what are you doing in the little like search bar? And they were like, I'm eating pasta. Like people would like literally just do that, you know? Um, but yeah. So back to the art world. Like at the time, I was kind of realizing that the art world like offers different freedoms to like different people, obviously. And like it seemed to me that some artists were allowed to like explore abstraction or fantasy or play, and other artists were kind of expected or pigeonholed into making work about tragedy or identity. For example, like women artists or like artists of colors a lot of the time like weren't put into big galleries unless they made work about like their experience. Like it was like the buyers were like, I mean, like it wasn't valid unless you were talking about your experience. And I didn't really want to make work about reality or identity at all because I was like having a hard, like, I'm like, we live in this world and I don't like really want to talk about that. And like part of the fun was like, I wanted it to be like Sims and like world building, you know, like I wanted to like kind of use art as a like release to be able to like create different types of spaces because I thought it was fun and cute and like whatever. Um, Even though ultimately I did end up like just making work about identity because like it's semiotic and like we're just having experiences and like but this it did shape how I thought about like how I'm perceived in the institution and who I'm making work for and the type of work that I'm making. Um, so I went on to eventually make this body of work, which was called DIY or Do It Yourself. Um, it was like a full space installation, like performance type of work where I was moving away from photography altogether and starting like, I was like hiring performers because like I was interested in performance, but I didn't want to do it. Like, I didn't have the performance like personality. Like I would just get like shake, even though I was like charged up, I would just get like shakes and stuff. I like just couldn't like get into it like that. So I would just like hire people to perform for me. Um, but I liked the interaction. I liked the like building of the worlds and like making up these scenarios, even though inherently they were like commenting on like real life. But I liked how bodies were moving through the space and around the work, and the image and documentation became more of a net arty experience. Like these were purposefully gifts of the documentation of the performance because I was like kind of channeling like AIM user gifts, like how you would like search sites to like there used to be this like instant message thing. I don't know if you guys know about it or how old everybody is, but it was like AIM and you could like have a little profile with HTML and like you'd pick like a square little gift. It would be like a stick figure like doing a kickflip or something. And it'd say like kickflip like in yellow words underneath. But I was like wanting it to feel kind of like that in the documentation of it because a lot of the things that I was making, like sculpturally or performance wise, were for like sculpture classes. So they would just be the ones experiencing it. But I was more interested in like how the after would experience that. That's like kind of a big conversation. I think people like consider that all the time. But for this body of work, I was chewing like a bunch of like bubble gum and then you know those like marble tiles that I had. I would like chew like big league chew and then I'd roll it out on like a marble tile and then I would, in our alt processes class, kind of just like print on different materials. So I'd print on like wax paper and then like spread it over the bubble gum that I had rolled out over the marble tile and then make like a kind of like ink imprint on the bubble. I didn't have photos of this. I like tried to find. But then I would take that bubble gum and then make these resin ice cubes and then I would have performers come out and like spray them so it looked like they were real ice cubes that were like melting and there was a fan trying to like cool them off even though that would never stop them from melting. But it was the idea of like constructing or like your perception of like what is real like in the space. And you would never get that from the gift. So it's just like two different things, I guess. So, um this is now getting into my body of work called Rave Baby. And these are like where I started with the iterations of it all. And this is like the work became less about like photography as like unreliable evidence and more about like memory in general being unreliable. Like my mom was a teenage raver in the 90s when she was like 16, like DC Philly raver when she had me. And then I like was like questioning kind of like how my mom remembered those years versus how like me being a child remembered those years and whether that actually mattered or not. So I was making a lot of like work based on like experiences that I had as a kid being born to a teenage raver. Like finding things. There was like sound aspects to this. I was like deconstructing bass amps and then like stretching kind of like pool floaties over them because like I got thrown in a pool when I was younger. Um, this image here is from a performance where I was sampling this machine called the Roland TR-909, which is like a big drum machine to like make house music and techno in the 90s, which is what my mom was like kind of dancing to. But I was kind of sampling and like making these sort of sound pieces that like were out of time but would come to into time like every so often or so. And yeah, like this orange bag on the tongue thing was like about how like I was a kid and I think that I took like a rave drug but like didn't know it because it looked like a mini M&M. But like even though it was like a mini orange M&M, right? Like we're like transforming these ideas to make them more like aesthetically accessible, I guess. Like just it being around orange was enough for me to switch it to like an orange and a stack of oranges for whatever reason. Um, and then, yeah, here it is again, just me toying with the documentation of that, like putting a bunch of like like speakers like around and like is that like how my documentation is going to look? That never like was how it did look, but it was something I was like interested in, like how does it live after? Um, this is like a part of the same body of work where I was like really into like taping off these sections because like that's what they do in museums and people respect things more in the space that way. Like kind of talking about like the institution and like the etiquette with art and challenging that in a way. This is like a bulletproof, like a bubble wrap bulletproof vest that I made. Here is like my grandfather's first entertainment system he ever bought with his own money, and my first entertainment system, and like his playing white noise and mine's playing kind of like house music. It's like a conversation that's going on there. And then I would like kind of like embrace the like wires because like I feel like in I don't know, like at a show, like or like just messing with synths or like there's always like quarter-inch cables going. I just felt like the spaghetti was like doing something for it. I don't know. And then like like I feel like this composition notebook here, what that was my mom's rave diary. She would like take it to every rave. People would like write whatever, like, hey, like love you like a sister, like blah blah blah. And then my mom would like take a picture and then like after it got developed would like post it in there. So there's like all these conversations over it and like stickers like all over it. But that was like kind of like my like godsend for all of my thesis. Like that was like my Bible. And then a little twister board piece here that I don't know, my mom was like making a lot of clothes for the raves. She made like twister pants and like astroturf overalls and bubble wrap like things. So I was like referencing like what the materials my mom's was using for like the materials I would use um later on. Then it kind of turned into like this like that orange sack before it turned into this medium poly mesh Neverlast punching bag that I filled with oranges, and it became like this piece about like uh being your like family's punching bag, and like when you like punch it, like it bruises and it leaks, and yeah, that was like a big kind of like thing that I was talking like my identity with my family, I guess. And I was like with this aloe sign here, like I just kind of found this backlit sign like behind this building and like me and my friends took it and then um it was like this I call it the aloe rave piece because it's about like being thrown in the pool and getting stung by a bee and breaking aloe and squeezing the aloe on your skin, but like making it more rave centric, I guess. Um yeah. And then this was like my thesis with the same kind of themes going on, like total transformation of the space or site, like making it work for us. Like, um, it was a rave party with a performance and like these sound aspects going on, but it was a joint show with my friend Hay that was doing ceramics at the time. So half of the pieces are his, half of the pieces are mine, and we kind of just made it work together. Um, yeah, being angsty in school, we like kind of like dropped out of our like senior show because it became about like I don't know. I hope that like my classmates aren't offended because of how childish it can be, but I just wanted to be able to like flesh out this idea. Like it needed to be installed in a space that was specific. Like I wanted to be able to transform the space for this and make it feel like a certain thing. I didn't want just like one like wall or spot in a random gallery because this ended up being like a 3 day the opening was like a 3 day rave, and it started with a performance where me and my mom took like a party drug together and like started off this like show. Hers wasn't real, but like mine was. And then like the show ended up like closing at 7 or something like that, 7 or 8, because we couldn't do it for 3 days because we we messed up the whole performance of it. But it was a great experience, I feel like. And we have great photos to show for it. And I don't know. I feel like I've never really been able to have full access and control over a space, which is really important to like installing and it being sculptural. Like this work here wasn't meant to exist like as photos for once. Like it was just supposed to be like a experiential thing. So like having a space that was site specific was kind of important to that. Um, so after that, like I started a gallery with my friends. It was like we called it Cherry Gallery. It was a collaborative, like artist run space that functioned free of profit, to provide a platform for emerging and established artists. Because I mean, we wanted more agency in defining what art could be. And to me, like who got to define art was the gallery owners and the people that were willing or had a platform to show art. And I didn't agree with who they were showing all the time and why they weren't showing like people that were emerging or just charged up or just wanted a space. I felt like there should be a space like that. Or we all did. It was like a group of like 7 or 8 of us. I think we paid like $32 a month or something. Um, but it was like a guerrilla style gallery in a parking garage, kind of. Like we paid the rent ourselves, like never charged artists to show. It was intentionally anti gatekeeping. I was like a big advocate of like no forms of credentialing. Like I didn't want people putting their legal names on anything or like having to have like that sort of like process. Like I just wanted it to be a space where we could have community. And like it became pretty popular and embedded like in the local art community. We hosted a lot of art shows, like talks, pop-ups, like safe havens for protesters like at times. But eventually like it shut down like everything does and it became like a new thing. I think it's material. A lot of the same people went and started this gallery called Material Room and they're doing great stuff. They do a lot of like noise and blah blah.
I didn't realize the material room was in that same site.
Well, it's not that site
Oh.
got condemned. They moved
Okay.
to another site. Yeah,
Okay.
like I think it like collapsed or something, which is why we ultimately had to leave there. Um, but yeah, so post college, totally like, well, actually, I got this internship that I was supposed to get credits for as like a styling assistant at this like fashion house called Need Supply in Richmond. It was like a small, like kind of luxury fashion retailer. And I kind of just like got the internship as a styling assistant because I wanted to get my foot in the door. Like they said, it would be like credits. I never like received the credits because I didn't do the paperwork on time. And that's the whole thing with like receipts and like being good academically. Like I just was like not like on it like that. But it's totally okay because I met the lead photographer there and we became friends. He thought I was cool, like told me about his projects, kind of like became a mentor to me. And then when he was leaving, like I ended up um, getting a job as a digital tech. And that was like my first like real industry job. Uh, so what is a digital tech? Basically, it's like sort of a specialized like photo assistant responsible for managing digital workflow. Like, so if the photographer is on set that's like shooting the model, like they have a tether cable going to a computer that like I'm sitting at and all the images are flashing up and I'm kind of like going through them in real time, like making selects is what they call it. Like I'm rating them so that when they come back at the end of the shoot, there's like a, a more worked through kind of batch of images that are usable. So like I'm like I also do like image processing, real like backups, and sometimes color grading, like edits on the fly, making annotations. Like I don't do the retouching, like I'm just like passing it on for post production, but like working with art directors, helping set up lights, sometimes doing grip, and just making sure that the assets are like have proper packaging like before I hand them off. And I use this program called Capture One for that. It's basically like Lightroom, if you've heard of Lightroom. It's subscription based, which everything is now, but it's really great. Like how it processes images is like way less crunchy in my opinion. It's really good for like tethered shooting. Um, yes. So I worked there for a little over 2 years. Like I had a bit of a rough time. I can show you some like features and stuff from there. How are we
Yeah,
doing on time, by the way?
maybe like 5 more minutes before we break for Q&A.
Okay, cool. So yeah, like I had a hard time at first because I was so charged up. Like looking at images became like really complex. Like I didn't understand like kind of like selling things like with images. And then I was also like too young and heady to kind of let go of like the fact that I could just like make money off of this and then also have my like side practice. Like I didn't really like believe in that. This is some of the work from Need Supply to Takayo. It's a lot more creative. They're treating like arts as objects. It's like a lot more sculptural. Um, but eventually I was able to like separate like the work from like my personal practice, which ended up being a lot less toxic for me. And then this studio went under and I started doing ad agencies for like a year, which was like basically just designing flyers and ad banners for Waze for 7-Eleven grand openings, which I mean, it was like a chill time. I was just trying to make money. And it was cool because I got to work from home. I never got to work from home before, besides like this, but pretty cool. Um, yes, the traditional trajectory for a photographer. So in this industry, basically you start off as like an assistant or a digitech, and then you move to like off model type stuff, and then you would go to like pro photog, like on model stuff. And I wasn't really interested in the trajectory. Like I liked just being a digitech, but like everybody's always like, well, you got to move up, you got to do this. Like, what are your goals? Like, blah, blah, blah. Because you work at a corporation and like they have to have all this stuff on paper for you, which I respect my bosses. Like, let's make this easy. But also at the same time, like, we're just trying to make money too. Um, but eventually, like the Digitech role became actually like a respectable role. Like now people just do this. Like you don't have to be a photographer, which is great for me because I felt like as a photographer, it was just too close. Like I didn't like want to direct people and I also didn't want to execute like other people's I like creative direction. But this way I could still use my skills, like be involved. um, so it was like way less toxic and I liked it this way. So then I started like Free People for, I was there for like 4 years, which was like really crazy because you're like on a high production fashion suit shoot set every single day for like 8 hours every, like for 4 years pretty much. Like I was just blam, 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 high production shoot, going places, working with people. But it was like really good for me, I feel like, because it's more about like what I latched onto was like anybody can kind of learn the job. It's all about being like a good worker, being trustworthy, reliable, and just like likable. Like everybody, like when we were doing hiring there, like people would always be like, do you know somebody that'd be good for this role? Or like, I feel like unfortunately people aren't really, or in my case fortunately, people aren't really looking for like the credentials, which is why finding community is like such a big deal. Like anybody can learn the work, like as long as that you're reliable and likable, like that's like a real skill. um but yeah, I mean, this is some on location stuff, this is some in-house stuff. If you're interested in freelancing, these are what your different kits can offer you, some on location or some like in studio stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's how I made it here.
Do you? Quick question for like the previous slide. Do you have your own? Like, do you own your like tripod laptop hood thing, or is that part of the
Yeah,
company's?
so
Or
well, so it depends on who you work for. Like if you're going to like an e-com house or e-commerce, you're shooting like in-house in studio, like a lot of the times they'll have their own machines, which is great because you can just go there. It's like low pressure. It's nice if you have your own kit because then you can like rent it out, obviously. I've only been doing this for like probably 6 or 7. I've been in-house like my whole career, except for the last like 6 months. Yeah, I had to leave just to be more available to my family. So I'm figuring that out. Um, but yeah, I don't have like like I kind of have a kit that's more like this right now, which is like all you need. You just can't really charge for that. And like it's more like in-house editorial, like they'll want this, but like most studios will like have that, or you can rent it yourself or
yeah. Well, cool. Do you want to stop sharing your screen so that we can see your face bigger? uh, does anybody
yes.
have? Thank you, by the way. Does anybody have questions for Dev? I've got a bunch, but I figure I'll let you all go for it first.
So are you still doing like freelancing like right now?
Yeah.
Can you
Do
explain
you,
like just sort of what you told me about like your schedule? Because I was like, oh wow, that's intense.
Yeah, so like previously, like so being in-house, like that means like you're there like on salary, obviously 9 to 5, like Monday through Friday. Being freelance is basically like I'm like working for 2 weeks out of the month. I make a lot more money doing it that way. and then I get my own like time to do whatever I need to. But there's a lot of pros and cons to it. Like I don't get like a benefit, or like I also have to pay my own tax. Like none of the taxes are taken out of like what they pay me, so I have to like set it aside and like pay the taxes. Also, it can be really slow sometimes. So like I think like halfway through December to like the end of January, I didn't have any jobs. And usually I have like 2 weeks in like Philly and then like 1 week in Richmond and then I'm back home for a week. Um, but yeah, it can be varying.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was wondering with the net art, is it like a very meticulous process, or do you kind of just like go with the flow, kind of whatever comes to your mind type of thing?
Um, it can be meticulous, especially if you don't know like the language. Like sometimes I'll go in with an idea of like a page that I want to build, but like because of the constraints, like it ends up being like something else. But now also because of AI, like I had to like, for example, I had to make like a retouching page on my site and I didn't know how to make a slider, or I was like following and like making all of these like sliders. Like I wanted like the before and after picture and then you slide it and it's like before and after, but I didn't know how to do that. And all of my like kind of experimenting wasn't as clean as I wanted. So I kind of like used AI for it. But like it helps you like kind of understand, and I feel like sometimes you do have to like use it to like see what it's capable of.
Yeah, definitely.
Vibe coding. Who else? All right, while people are thinking of Dev, can you explain this image?
Yeah, that was just so. So that is a light test where I was holding like a gray card for like a shoot that I was on, but like I was just messing around and seeing what AI could do and telling it to hold it, like make me hold tacos or like hot dogs or like a hoagie. Just like kind of crazy. I'm like really into food because I had to take all those kitchen jobs. But yeah, I was messing around with AI on that, which I
Got it.
do think it's important to like mess around with, or else you could fall. But like, there's this dude, Mark Schumer. He works in the AI industry. He like did this write up about AI and like kind of like the best ways to get ahead of it. And it's, even though it's like scary, and like I mean, it could have all these like, I mean, there's all these precautions with it. The best way to kind of like interact with it now that it exists anyways is to like start to understand it and start to use it and kind of know what it's capable of. So like yeah, I like kind of mess around in there every now and then and kind of see what it can do.
I mean, I got more questions, but anyone else? All right, so you mentioned AI. You started your talk talking about the community that you built in school with like everyone hanging out, working in the studio, like bouncing ideas off of each other and everything. And I feel like it was like very obvious to see how that's like important, and how it led to your growth. And probably like felt that way to everybody in there, right? Um,
Yeah.
I immediately was wondering like, well, I wonder how initially like it was tech, or like tech started maybe like eating away at those communities, like or decentralizing them. And so you know you could have like friends sort of like all over the world, but they weren't just like in the room with you kind of thing. And so there was like pluses and minuses to that. And then now with AI and chat GPT and stuff like that, LLMs, I feel like that's getting eroded even more. Like before, people would like ask their friends, like, hey, how do you do this? Then people were asking the internet, like, hey, how do you do this? And now they're just asking an AI, like, hey, how do you do this? Or like, what do you think of this idea? How's that,
Right.
just in your personal opinion or your personal experience, like from that like beginning sort of core nucleus of like your friends in the studio and like building community, like where do you see that going? How does, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I worried that that's going to like dissolve, but is the new thing coming like an adequate replacement? Or I'm curious like your opinions on that, having sort of your
I
toes
feel
in-
like I feel like when I was hanging out with like my peers and like those late night studios and how do I like those questions were like more of a conversation of like when you're like actually hanging out. Like it's like not like, oh, like what should we order like tonight? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it kind of was that like when you care about like people's work and you're in there and you kind of want them to make the right moves, or it's just like engaging to like have that dialogue. Like my father-in-law, like will ask AI like how to make like a 2 gallon chili recipe. And like I get that, like how do I do this or that? But I also understand what you're saying with like because I see it on the news too, like people taking like relationship advice and stuff like that. That's pretty like creepy. But to me, I feel like yeah, like it was more of like like we were hanging out and the like kind of mutual like topic that we wanted to like talk about was just like what we were working on. And like just because we were like so charged up like and like reading, I just feel like we had so much input and like kind of references to throw around. So yeah, it felt more like you were hanging out with people. I don't think that would change because you don't just like hang out with an AI bot really. You're like it's just there to like answer something for you. Whereas when you're hanging out like in the studio late night, like these ideas kind of just come about like organically because you're having just conversations. If that answers the question at all.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're sort of at the end of our time. Anyone else? Last questions for Dev? Make sure that. Cool. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Dev. That was awesome. You can find links to Dev's Instagram and that awesome website. That's so cool that you made that website, like, just coded it yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody should try. It's a fun place to be, I feel like, just in your own little page.
Yeah, we can find those links in the artist bio page in our canvas. Yeah, and thanks. It was great to see everybody, and I'll talk to you all later. Thank you, Dev.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dad.